Case file number 3503, written by Designer Art 2494. A shift on the Aegean coast. My best friend and I are currently spiraling because an event we survived together has somehow been rewritten. For reference, we don't drink or do drugs. We are 22 now, but when we were 19, we went on a trip to a rural coastal area in Greece. We've discussed this specific day a million times over in the last 3 years, and our memories of it are identical down to the smallest detail, yet now everything seems to insist it happened differently. We were staying at a hotel in the middle of nowhere and decided to hike 2 hours along the coast to a restaurant on a remote cape. My friend was all dressed up in platform heels, a long pink skirt, and a white top. Remember this. As we walked into the restaurant, we noticed a group of men all turn their heads towards us. This happened to us on a daily basis since we are conventionally attractive, so we didn't really bat an eye. However, throughout the whole lunch, they kept looking at us and talking to each other, and we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. There were only 2 other couples there, so it felt very pointed. As we left the restaurant, those men got up and followed us out immediately. In front of the restaurant, there were rocks leading into the sea and a few cars parked outside. We decided to take some photos on the rocks, but we saw the men starting to take photos of us. They were also constantly on their phones, talking to someone while pointing their cameras at us. It was an open area, and there wasn't another soul around, so it was obvious. We got really weirded out, but we didn't have anyone to ask for help, and we came on the trip alone and didn't want to call and worry our parents, so we decided we should head back to the hotel ASAP. For context, I had been vlogging our whole trip so far and was filming everything, including this entire incident. As we started walking back towards our hotel, we were walking on the rocks that ran parallel to the rural quiet road and noticed that the men got in their car and were slowly driving behind us. After about 7 minutes, the rocks finished and the coastline hit a wall where the water met the land. The road we had been following went into a very thick, bushy area. These men were still creeping after us in their car the whole time. We knew if we went down that road into the bushes, they would probably try to kidnap us. To avoid the road, we decided to walk through the water to get to the next headland. The tide was quite high, over our knees, and I remember filming the whole thing, us walking through the water with my friend in her platform heels and long skirt getting soaked. We kept looking back at the men who had stopped the car opposite where we entered the water. They actually got out of the car and were just standing there watching us walk through the sea. We eventually made it to the other side and sat on a bench, watching them watch us until they finally drove off. Now, the reason we are freaking out is that I recently went to find the footage for a birthday post for my friend. I wanted to make an edit of our iconic moments, and I saw that the footage has completely changed. In the footage of us taking photos by the sea, where it was definitely just us and those men, there are suddenly random women in bikinis right next to us who are never there. Most importantly, the footage of us in the water is now somehow time-stamped on a completely different day, and we are wearing different clothes, which means going to that restaurant and walking through the water has happened on different days? To add to that, the men and their car are nowhere to be seen. I've watched the 20 minutes of us in the water, and I never once mentioned the car or panned the camera toward them. It just looks like we're randomly walking through deep water for no reason. We both are 100% sure we filmed those men while we were walking through the water. We talked about them in the video and afterwards for the vlog. Even weirder, I called a close friend who wasn't on the trip but who we have told the story to countless times, and he told me he's never heard it in his life. He was genuinely surprised why we wouldn't have mentioned something so crazy. My friend and I both have the exact same memory of us walking through the water, and because those men from the restaurant were after us, she thinks we experienced quantum immortality. Maybe in the original timeline, something bad happened and our consciousness jumped to this version of reality. I wish this was a telephone glitch, but the fact that we are wearing different clothes in those two videos just signifies that it is not. I've reset my phone numerous times and it doesn't go back. Also, I watched the video numerous times in the last 2 years, and they were always the same as we remembered. It's like our memories exist in a world that doesn't match the physical facts anymore. Has anyone else ever experienced a shift like this? I'm wondering, what else might not line up in this reality? To clarify a few things about my friend wearing platforms to hike, she wears platforms everywhere. The beach, the shops, and even walking along the coast like we did. She's very short, so she does not leave the house without her platforms on. I was wearing Birkenstocks and not suffering as much. And the reason we walked through the water in shoes was because the seabed had rocks and sea urchins. So I think you're both onto something. Quantum immortality seems to be the most fitting thing when events completely shift from what they should be. But I don't think it happened in the moment where those stalkers actually did something in a different reality, your original one, and you died then. No, I think it's just something happened later on where you were both ported to a new reality together. Dave, sticking his booty up. When it happened is unclear. Something else happened between that point and now, where you even checked the videos before and they were normal, then eventually they shifted, so it's clearly something that happened later on with both of you at the same time. Maybe you were driving together at some point. At any point where you were together, it could have happened, really. Because again, we're so fragile. And why you are ported with the person you're next to, I don't know if it's just proximity. I think it probably depends on having an actual relationship or connection with them. Soul bond, you could say. And then if you die, you can quantum immortality together. Which in this case is certainly much smoother and less jarring for your emotions, because you still have one person that remembers the true nature of the events that unfolded. Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. Today I have 12 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you. My favorite two, the first one you just experienced with the stalking on the beach, and the second one involves bright lights. Let's get to it. Case file number 3504, written by Sinner Delight. 6 hours later. When I was growing up, like 6th grade for perspective, I was staying out at a friend's house. We both lived out in the woods and backcountry outside a small farming community. Both his parents were out for the night, and his older brother wasn't home that night. We started playing with one of those little indoor Nerf basketballs, just shooting it while talking and listening to music. Well, I think I threw it and it rolled out the door. No big deal or anything. A few minutes later, we went to find it. This is where it gets scary. We checked in the hallway first, but it wasn't there. The bathroom was across the hall, so we checked there, still no. Both the other doors right there were closed, but we checked anyway. It wasn't in either bedroom. That was weird enough to begin with, but being young, we just said whatever and went to watch TV. At probably 4 in the morning, when we were walking back towards his room, the hallway lights were off. Halfway down the hall, we see the ball rolling down the hall towards us. We looked at each other and ran past it on either side, as it was in the middle of the hall. As we ran past, I glanced up and noticed for the first time the attic hatch was open a few inches. Thinking back, it was just big enough to fit the ball through. When his parents got back later the next morning and we asked, neither had seen the ball in the hallway or living room. Little to say, we burnt the hoop that went with it and never got another. Case file number 3505, written by Mr. Creepster, The Singing Book. A week ago, I was babysitting my 19-month-old nephew. My brother wanted to take his wife out to a movie, and since his little kid is easy to handle and pretty cool, I decided to do it. It's late at night, so the kid will be asleep the whole time. They put him to sleep, and I loaded up my save file for Dragon's Dogma while they put the baby monitor down on the counter. I hear her read a story to him, then leave. He does his usual mommy separation crying, then peace and quiet. So, 4 hours later, they had enjoyed their dinner and are probably watching Snow White and the Huntsman right now. It was a terrific night and got some gaming in, and he hasn't stirred once. Then I hear a slight whine, followed by the sound of one of his singing toys go off. I thought nothing of it at first, but it keeps going and going. So my initial thought is that he has mastered the crib escape and is up there playing with his toy. I start up the stairs when I decide to turn on every light in his house after I get the willies randomly. I get into his room and he's asleep in his crib, and lying in the middle of the floor is a little plastic book that's the source of the song. I walk over and reach down to grab it, and it goes off again, enough to startle me, then make me laugh. I grab it, shut it, and turn around to walk out the door when I hear shuffling. I turn and look at the crib, and he's standing and staring at me. What the hell? Shut the door and ran down the stairs like any man would. Not a peep was heard after. Also, used to have a girlfriend who would scream bloody murder in her sleep. It only happened once with me, but her roommate said it was pretty common. Being woken up by what you imagine to be the sound of your girlfriend getting murdered once is enough to scare you crapless. And then this? Case file number 3506, written by L. Wolfall. The 4th of July Séance. I was in high school and celebrating 4th of July at a friend's house. During this time of my life, I was really into the whole ghost and communicate with spirits thing, as were a couple of friends. The friend's house I was at happened to be next to a cemetery. It was actually the last house before the cemetery, and the headstones were maybe 200 feet away. Well, we decided that we would play the little game known as light as a feather, stiff as a board. For those who don't know, you gather in a circle around someone lying down and put your fingers on them in an attempt to lift them up using only the tips of your fingers, sort of like a mind over matter type experience. We shut the windows because we had turned on the air conditioner, and I had personally shut and locked the back door with the deadbolt. We then sat around our friend Christine, who had volunteered, and agreed to no chanting as it would distract people. As we all started focusing, I noticed Christine became suddenly lighter. I also heard someone whispering in front of me, but had my eyes closed as I was trying to focus. I told my friend Rachel to stop whispering, as it was throwing me off and I couldn't concentrate. After a few seconds, it didn't stop, so I said it again, and this time opened my eyes to look at her. That was when I noticed two things. The first was that Christine was actually up a little bit, creepy in its own right. The second was that Rachel was looking right at me with the color drained from her face. She said she had heard it too, but thought it was me. The second I broke contact with Christine's body, the back door I had shut myself and locked slammed shut so hard it shook the house and rattled the glass so much I thought it would break. Needless to say, that freaked everyone out. People yelled in surprise, everyone except Christine, who was still laying there, eyes closed. We thought she had fallen asleep, but nothing we did woke her up. We started to panic and almost called 911 until she suddenly woke up, basically jumping up. She then asked why we hadn't started yet, and she was bored, hungry, and wanted to know who wanted pizza. Freaking creepy crap, man. Only one other time did I play around like that, and it also scared the crap out of me. Never again. Case file number 3507, written by J. Blogan, 23. Overnight Impossibility. A few days ago, my new bath towels had duplicated from 2 towels to 3. I have no updates on that situation as it has remained unchanged since, but something very strange happened at my neighbor's house yesterday that I have to share too. So, recently, the house across the street from my own was listed and apparently sold because they took the sign off the yard. We have lived here for the past 8 years, and in that time, nothing about the neighboring property has changed. It is a small lot with a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house, and if I recall, it was built in the 1950s. However, none of us has seen the new owner. Lights are on at night, but there is never a car parked outside. So we started to think that perhaps someone was squatting in the home. This past weekend, we had a terrible ice storm, and since we didn't want whoever we believe was in the house to be left out in the cold, my family and I decided that we would get more information when the weather improved, and to not think about it. Although I'm already still stuck on the extra towel. Yesterday, before I left for work, I decided to go check out the property and meet my new neighbor. But as I started to turn into the driveway, I froze. Towards the back of the property was a brand new carport or garage, a metal-style building. It was over 12 feet tall, with what appeared to be a single-car garage and an overhead door and a one-car overhead cover, so it appears that 2 vehicles can use a structure, one parked in the garage, one under the carport. Now, why is this a big deal? This building seemingly popped up overnight. It was never there before. Again, my family and I have lived at this house for nearly a decade, and I drive by this house every day. It's too big to have been delivered as it is, and my family and I were iced in for 4 days, and I seriously doubt it was built during an ice storm. I decided to just back out and go back home. Unlike the towel situation though, my entire family is freaked out about this one. We've all acknowledged that the building wasn't there Saturday when the storm began, and that no one saw anyone tow in or build a one-car garage during the storm. This started this whole new debate into the mystery towel and a few other strange things around the house lately, but this is by far the one that's most undeniable to everyone. So I really like the implausibility of this. I mean, yeah, you can have large structures delivered. You can have an entire house delivered. Like, not just a tiny home, an entire house. They have to like close down the roads so they can actually travel. It'll expand, like it's the size of the whole road or even overlaps on the sides. But they can do it. I mean, probably very expensive to have it done. I haven't had no idea on the prices of that, but they can deliver large structures. 100%. Would they do that in icy condition? 0% chance of that. It's not about money, it's just safety. There's no way they would do that. Even if it cleared a bit, they would wait, I think. And not only that, but it makes a lot of noise. They wouldn't do it overnight. There's no way. Now, could they have had materials delivered and they somehow built it overnight? That's not impossible, but in the conditions you're talking about, and also without making any noise, I mean, most of these structures, you don't have to hammer things in, but there's screws and bolts and you have to tighten them, unless he did it all manually with silent tools. But even then, it seems impossible, doesn't it? So is this another reality or what happened? I'm not sure. It doesn't really seem like quantum immortality. You still have the issue with the towels, which unfolded before, and your family remembers that. So unless you all ported together to a new reality, this one has me stumped. Case file number 3508, written by JFWPA. A metallic message. First, I want to say I am a skeptic. I am scientifically trained and empirical by nature. But I also have to say, a lot of very out-of-the-ordinary situations have been happening to me lately. I am open to conjecture, and I'm humble enough to admit that I know nothing in the grand scheme of things. One of my favorite types of news stories are scientists or physicists, astronomers are baffled by XYZ that was previously unknown, thought impossible, and cannot be explained by current conventional scientific methods or physical laws. As the legendary Mulder once said, I want to believe. My latest involves a lowly pressure cooker my late mom gifted me many years ago that I still use regularly. Nothing makes better hard-boiled eggs than a pressure cooker. They literally fall out of the shell, and I have the method down pat. Several months ago, I noticed a soldered washer on the underside of this rig regulator weight went missing after use, and I was upset. I searched for hours everywhere, and I mean everywhere, with military precision, but I couldn't find it. Moved the stove, moved the fridge and table, on my hands and knees in a grid pattern on the floor with a high-power flashlight, every inch of the counter and sink to include the disposer. Nothing. How in the hell did it just disappear, I thought. Very defeated, I had to order a complete replacement weight. That was a new design, and life went on. I had been using this new regulator weight for a couple months, not really liking it, and after finishing a batch of eggs, went about hand-washing the lid and pot as always. This means the sealing ring is removed, but that's it for disassembly. I remove the ring over the counter and walk to the sink, where I'm holding the lid in one hand, a sponge in the other. I hear a tink in the sink and see the washer laying there, as if it fell from the sky above me. There is no way I would or could have missed seeing this washer remain on the outlet pipe of the lid, as I went over this area a million times thinking it was somehow stuck there, and if stuck there, the new weight would not function correctly. No way this washer could have lodged inside the original weight either, and the sealing ring could not have held it as it had been removed a bunch of times, and anything in the track would not allow the lid to close. I was so happy to have this washer back because it made the unit complete and original, and my mom knew how much I enjoyed using it over the decades. Almost like a little something passing between worlds to brighten my life up. Not having everything be a defeat, as I have been having a very, very bad time of it lately. Does glitch in the matrix theory have a component where happenings like what I explained never happen until a certain frequency in one's life becomes attuned to it and it becomes commonplace? I wonder too if some of this could be emotional disruptions or even psychological issues. You actually touch on something that I briefly theorized or hypothesized a while back, where if you have a soul transfer, so you undergo quantum immortality, or for some other reason you're in a different universe, your quantum signature, for lack of a better identifier of what this is, the part of your signature from your soul is probably tethered to your first reality, and moving over to another one may be in the process as well of being ported over. There could be data fragments that cause issues with your nearby environment, if it isn't perfect, which maybe represents why things would port back. Now, in your particular case, while I think all that is true, what I just said, it probably is some will or entity involved because of how it comes back in the locations it does. It doesn't seem like it's a random glitch to me. Glitches to me, they are random. If there's a will or presence involved, it's, I guess, more paranormal. I think it all kind of blends together. We're just talking about the nature of reality in the end. But if there's a force or intelligence involved, then I think it's just more paranormal. There's intent involved, which makes a big difference to me. Not nefarious in this case, just curious. Was the glitch caused by your soul being unstable in the environment and then eventually was returned to you by this entity with intent? In a way, in a place where you couldn't miss it. Case file number 3509, written by Haggy, Twice in the Darkness. So, back in high school, I discovered this fantastic secluded makeout spot right outside of town. It's a good little drive following one of the biggest main roads out. It dead ends in this clearing out in the desert with a good view of the mountains to the east and the city to the west. You're surrounded by vegetation and the night sky just looks absolutely beautiful. In 4 years of taking dates out there, I had only once seen another human being, and never any wildlife or anything. It was incredibly solitary. One night, my girlfriend and I went out there to stargaze after a night on the town. This wasn't uncommon. We'd often end up out there. It was a new moon night. The only light was stars, and the visibility was less than stellar, but still good enough to see off in the distance. So we're hanging out, and as usual, one thing leads to another, and we're suddenly in our back seat. Out of nowhere, the area surrounding the car lights up intensely, damn near blinding, but only for a flash, then it's dark again. I wasn't even sure she had seen it, until she asked me what it was. No clue. Let me investigate real quick. Stepping outside, I see absolutely nothing. No helicopters, no people, no animals, nothing. We started to shrug it off and laugh, but as I was getting back into the car, it happened again. No warning, no noise, just a sudden flash of light, seemingly from above, that completely encircles the car. We dipped immediately. I haven't been back out there since. So, the mundane explanation for this, I think, could just be meteorites in the high upper atmosphere breaking apart, and this can cause tremendous bright light. But depending on the distance, you should have noise. The fact there's no noise at all is what makes me think, well, could be aliens involved, maybe in the activation of their drives. Maybe their cloaking technology isn't perfect or malfunctioning. Any technology, even if advanced, probably still has glitches, you know. If reality itself can have glitches, then any technology within the reality would also be prone to glitches, no matter how advanced, I would think. So maybe something like that. I love the idea of anything involved with stargazing and just peering out into the great expanse, the final frontier, which probably isn't the final frontier. There's higher dimensions and all that, but it just appeals to the Star Trek nerd in me so much. Just, as Picard would say, space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Love it. I've been, just on a tangent, because I love those, been rewatching Star Trek in reaction channels, and there's not that many people that are reacting to Star Trek, like the whole journey, and treating it very seriously, but I just love that. It's vicarious living, experiencing what you know and love through different people, and also they have different perspectives. Sometimes they don't enjoy the same episodes you do, or maybe they enjoy it a bit less, or maybe they enjoy episodes you'd never even considered, and that makes you enjoy them even more. It's just I love that, new perspectives. It's fantastic. Oh, before I go, just one last thing. Just have to compliment Patrick Stewart's both his voice, which is the best voice in the universe, I think. Morgan Freeman's pretty good too, but Patrick Stewart, just that British accent with the gravitas of his voice is so sweet vocal nectar, I think. And his acting chops are so good. I mean, I always knew from my first watch of Star Trek that he was great. He's a great actor, but there are some scenes, especially when he has to express emotion. It's not just that he contorts his face, where it really feels like he is experiencing the man, not as a character, but he is Picard. If there's some tragedy that happens to him, I mean, I won't go into specifics in case you haven't seen it, which please go watch it if you haven't, but I really appreciate talent like that. There's a level of talent where you just have to bow to it and just say, wow, thank you for being so good, because then you get so immersed into the story with them, and it just transcends what television, you might think television could be. Goes another level above it, which is great. Okay, tangent over. Case file number 3510, written by Heather Howell. The Wrong Shade of Blue. I was staying at my grandparents' house, and they were out for lunch with friends. For clarity, their house is a T shape, with the long end of the T surrounded by gardens. I'm in the bedrooms at the end of the T, playing a mobile game. I'm super absorbed when I suddenly hear an almighty thump. My head snaps up to look at the window, and I see a pale, wrinkled hand with a cornflower blue sleeve pulling away from the glass. The rest of the body is obscured by the curtain. I can't see a face. Instantly, I get up and go towards it, assuming it's my grandpa back from lunch. There's no one there. For reference, there's a gravel path about 3 feet thick bordering the entire house. The windows are single glazed. Yes, it gets freezing in the winter, so you can hear someone step onto the path all the way up the garden. For someone, especially an old man, to touch the window without stepping onto the path, they would have had to lean a good distance and push themselves back, which doesn't seem plausible at his age of 87. I'm not scared, though. I go to both doors and look out at the garden and see nobody. I think that it might be a bird, but no, there's nothing on the path, and no birds that match the colors I saw. Plus, there were definitely fingers. I hear the crunching of the gravel as my grandparents pull into the drive 5 minutes later. I still think that my grandpa was playing a joke on me, only to realize that the woolen jumper he's wearing is just a shade too dark to be the one I saw. He denied it fervently, and I know he wouldn't lie about it. I'm not sure what to think. I know what I saw. White hand, faded blue sleeve. Nobody believes me, but I'm healthy and don't imagine things. This was several years ago at this point, and nothing similar has happened since. I do believe that time overlaps, as I've had several weird premonitions, but nothing like this. Case file number 3511, written by Hatari Kami. Peter Pan at Night. When I was about 8 years old, I had the worst night that I can remember. It all started in the basement where my room was, where I had a bunk bed and I slept on the top bunk. I woke up in the middle of the night and saw some animals in my room. I know for sure one of them was a giraffe, but the others I can't really recall. I browsed around my room and then realized that at the foot of my bed there was a cartoonish Peter Pan just hovering, laying on his stomach with his hands under his chin, just looking at me. Once I found the courage, I just got out of my bed and booked it upstairs to my mom's room, and woke her up to tell her what I just witnessed. She pretty much just told me to go sleep on the couch, so that's what I did. After some time of just kind of laying there trying to sleep, I turned on my side and had a view of our kitchen and dining room. This is when I started to see the black figures going back and forth between the kitchen and the patio door that was in the dining room. All the curtains were closed, so I couldn't really make out what the black figures were. They just looked like the shape of people. So once again, I got up and booked it into my mom's room again, waking her and her then boyfriend up to tell them what I was seeing. Her boyfriend got up and checked out the patio and deck, and of course, there was nothing. Now they just tell me to sleep on the floor in their room. What happened next was probably the creepiest part for me. I'm laying on the floor once again, trying to sleep, and I'm looking over at the dresser in the room. On the dresser was this porcelain, clown-like decorative doll that was about 8 inches tall. All of a sudden, it just gets up and starts dancing around on the top of the dresser. And then after a little while, it just sits on the edge of the dresser and just looks at me. At this point, I just turned on my other side and buried my face into my pillow and completely covered myself with my blanket. Somehow I fell asleep at some point. That was one messed up night that never repeated. Case file number 3512, written by Nilish. Fog every night. My friend lives in a very suburban part of the shore area in New Jersey. His development was a wooded area that was made into a housing area, middle to upper class community. There is an area where hunting is permitted, sort of a creepy wooded area. So one night, my friend, whose room is on the second floor towards the front of the house, hears a growl, more like a growl-shriek combo, under his window. He then hears clawing noises. He said that he was so out of it and tired, even though he was momentarily terrified, he somehow fell back to sleep and thought nothing of it the next morning. At the breakfast table, his mother asked him if he heard anything odd last night, so they exchanged stories and both became super creeped out by it. The reason that I get creeped out to this day is when I drive away from his house, I have to drive by the woods where whatever scared his family would most likely have come from. To add to the level of spookiness is that the area is close to a bay, so fog rolls in like every night. Case file number 3513, written by Chocolate Cyanide, 2 months after the Circus fire. I've led a very simple and uneventful life, but my father has some stories. Boy, does he have some stories. Once upon a time, he was a sheriff's deputy, let's say mid-1970s. Along a stretch of highway that was within his jurisdiction, a circus was passing through and the engine of the clown's truck caught fire and exploded or something, killing everyone inside. My father and his partner were a couple of the deputies that responded first. My dad tells me it was awful. The truck had effectively burned to ashes, leaving a twisted and distorted metal frame. No one had been able to escape and everyone inside had been killed by either fire or carbon monoxide. Fast forward a couple of months. My father and his partner are on patrol, driving that same stretch of highway. As they near the spot where the truck had burned, the engine of their cruiser dies and the lights go out. My dad curses heartily, as is his favorite hobby, and pulls the car to the shoulder. They park the car, pop the hood, and get out to check the engine with their flashlights. Flashlights don't work. My dad's partner says something like, "Hey, wasn't this where that clown car burned?" Being a superstitious man, my father feels the hairs on the back of his neck rise. He opens the hood. The engine roars to life. The headlights come back on, His flashlight now works. My dad slams the hood shut, turns to his partner and says, "Let's get the hell out of here." My dad told me that story after I was more or less an adult, so I don't imagine he was trying to scare little kid me. He's also very morally opposed to lying for any reason other than to protect the innocent, so I have a tendency to believe him. I also ran into his old partner sometime after and asked him, and he verified my dad's story in detail. Probably all coincidence, but definitely something to rustle the old jimmies. Case file number 3514, written by Bookworm90. The Grey Tea in 15 minutes. So I was recently about to do my morning weight session at home, and before I began, I was looking around for the t-shirt I usually wear when exercising. It was an oversized grey tee, which I usually leave on my weight bench amongst the other garments I usually wear daily. When I began to look around the area, it didn't appear to be where I left it. So I left the room and checked the drawers in my bedroom. It had recently been washed, so it could have landed in a closed drawer. I looked in all the drawers and it wasn't there. At this point I figured, oh well, I'll just carry on with my routine. I returned to the lounge where my weight bench is and bundled up the articles of clothing on my weight bench into my arms and moved them all to a nearby coffee table where they live for the duration of my workout. I walked back to the weight bench and made a start on my routine, which typically involves some dumbbell workouts which are performed while standing directly in front of the weight bench and facing towards it, as there is a mirror mounted directly behind the head of the bench, which I use to keep an eye on form. I had been in front of my weight bench working out for roughly 10 to 15 minutes when I noticed the grey t-shirt placed perfectly on the weight bench toward the edge closest to me, folded neatly, like it was there all along. This was very strange to me, because as I had said previously, I had removed every article of clothing from the bench to clear it before I started my routine, and I had not seen it amongst them. I distinctly recall looking at the bench and seeing nothing on it. I also did not leave the room when I started my routine, and nobody was in the house but myself. I also didn't move from the front of the bench during that initial part of my routine. Guys, it honestly felt like the shirt materialized from thin air and appeared on the bench. I don't see how I could have stood in front of it for maybe 15 minutes and not seen it. I was picking up and putting down weights maybe 2 feet in front of the bench and was frequently at eye level to the place it appeared. I can't say it, but when I saw it, things felt weird, like the energy was off for a small amount of time. Now time for the jokes of the day. One spelling mistake can ruin your entire marriage. I accidentally messaged my wife, "I'm having a great time. Wish you were her." No, I mean here. Of course, people should understand it's a spelling mistake, but it definitely doesn't look good. Definitely doesn't look good. My dad was always a, if you got up there on your own, you can get down on your own sort of man. Fantastic father. Terrible air traffic controller, though. Did you hear about the guy who invented the door knocker? He won the Nobel Prize. I don't understand how people have a hard time sleeping. I can do it with my eyes closed. I heard that, by law, you have to turn on your headlights when it's raining in Sweden. How the hell am I supposed to know when it's raining in Sweden? Check your weather app. Video up here. YouTube thinks you'll like it. Check it out. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. I'll see you next time.